Hello, everyone. So welcome back from the break. So for the second half of today's lesson, we will be talking about how to install Python and how to also install Pycharm. So like we talked about before the break, Python is a programming language, so it will not be able to actually run on its own. You will need an IDE, otherwise known as Pycharm. So to explain it, Python is just a programming language. A computer can't really read it, but if we use an IDE that can actually run Python, then the computer can read it and computer can output whatever you want it to. So now let's download and install Python. So what you do is you come to www.python.org, actually do python.org, and you're taken to this page here. All right, so it should look like this. Then you hover over this Downloads tab, and then you come over here to download for Windows. I'm actually using a Windows 10 computer. If many of you are, that's good. If you are using a Mac or a Linux machine, don't worry just feel free to email me or comment, and I will help you. I'll give you the instructions on how to download Python for Mac OS and Linux. So you just want to click on Python 3.7.2 and click on it, and it will take you, simply give you an executable. It should say something like Python slash 3.7.2. If there is a new version of Python out, then just download that new version. But for now, it's just Python 3.7.2. It's a perfectly fine version. You can actually do all of the functions there, but if there's a new version, just make sure the new version is new or it's 3.7.2 or newer. If it's like 3.5 or something like that, then you're doing something wrong. So it should be this, and I've actually downloaded this quite a couple of times, but it should say nothing there. Okay, so now you want to go to JetBrains. All right, it's called Pycharm, JetBrains.com. Come back here. This is the URL you should type in: www.jetbrains.com/Pycharm. Or you can even go to Google and just type in Pycharm IDE and click on the first link, and it should take you to this website. So the first thing you come here is, it says Pycharm. You should see the Python IDE for professional developers, and you click download now. So it's going to take you to this page here. It says download Pycharm on the top. It gives you options for Windows, Mac OS, Linux. Again, if you're using a Mac OS machine or a Linux machine, just let me know and I can give you the instructions on how to download Pycharm. But I'm using a Windows machine, and if you're using a Windows machine, come to over to Community and click Download. So it said, thank you for downloading Pycharm. Your download should start shortly. You don't have to do anything else. The executable is on the left, lower left, and it's going to take a little bit to download. So before I walk you through the complete installation process, let's talk a little bit more about the Python website. So one thing I really love about the Python website is its community. So if you ever have problems that when you're coding on your own or you're doing complex projects, you want to go to the Python community. And what I like about the Python community is if you go down here, it will say forums. Okay, when you're looking at forums, and then you can go to Python forums that way, and it will take you to a forum where there's general coding help. If you can see here, there are tons of threads and posts. The last post was 3 minutes ago, so you know this is a really, really active forum. Um, for students who are taking a programming course, these are people. There can be people who will help you. Data science for me, I'll come here a lot for a lot of machine learning, neural networks, pandas, NumPy. These are a lot of libraries I use. If I ever have any problems, I come here. So also for game development, networking, these are also really popular forums that people use. For example, they are updated almost every day. So you can come here, for example, I want to go look at homework, or instead I want to look at, say, data science, for example. I can come here, and then in the forum, you can, for example, you can read this, and it sort of functions like any other internet server, and usually there are people who can help you out, and that's that. So actually, Pycharm community is it's actually finished downloading. So let's just click it once, and it will open up the executable. So let's just wait. So do you want your this app? Say click yes, and it will lead you to this. It will say welcome to Pycharm Community Setup Edition. Setup will guide you through the installation of Pycharm. It's recommended that you close all other applications. Okay, click next. Choose your installation location. I have it just sort of in my program files, but if you want, you can install Pycharm in your desktop. Click next. Here you want to click 3064-bit launcher, and here you want to click associations.py. So this actually allows you to um, hook up Pycharm to the actual Python programming language. So make sure you check in this box and check in the 64-bit launcher box, okay? And that's all you have to do. Don't check in anything else. Don't download and install JRE or add launchers. Don't worry about that. Just check these two boxes. Click next, and then click install. So now Pycharm is going to install. While it installs, I'm just going to show you some cool features on the Pycharm website, for example. Again, if you want to come here and support, there's a lot of open source projects you can look at. For example, Kotlin, I've actually used this it's a really cool hybrid that allows you to do really cool things with Python. Um, Resources, again, there's just a lot to do with JetBrains. There's a lot of tools that help you with game development, and there are just a lot of tools here that JetBrains made. For example, AppCode, all of these. If you want to definitely check those out and experiment with them, I more than encourage you to do so. It's just find the IDE that works for you. I really like Pycharm. Okay, so Pycharm is still installing. Let's just give it another minute. And yeah, let's just give it another minute. So for the rest of today's lesson, I will actually help you guys create your first Python program. We will run a few lines of code, and I will give you guys your first assignment, and we'll do a slow recap. So every single lesson at the end, we will do a recap, to sort of talk about the most important points, what I really want you guys to take out of this lesson, and I'll talk about uh, the assignment, and yeah, so Pycharm is actually finished installing, so we can just finish. We can actually just run this and then finish, and it will open up Pycharm. So you should get this launcher here, and let's say loading project. Okay, so I actually have a project installed already. If you don't have a project installed, then there will be a little bit of a problem. So it will take you to a default window, and in the default window, you can actually go to it will direct you to this thing called to default settings. I actually opened up my settings here, and um, let me just see where it is. Okay, so it's actually here. It's actually in the project interpreter. So if you're in your default settings, for example, when you first install Pycharm, Pycharm will actually take you to the default settings. Right now, I have my settings open because um, I've actually done quite a bit of projects in Pycharm, so I've actually have a lot of files in it. So what we want to do is, let's say if you don't have the default settings window open, you can simply go into File and you can go to Settings here. Right, it will take you to this window. If you just installed Pycharm, it's even better. It will take you directly to this window. And what you want to do for this window, you want to go to, first you want to go to your appearance. You want to make sure, for example, you have dark EULA, you have high contrast, you're going to have IntelliJ, and these just sort of make the interface different. I personally like using the dark format, and um, there's just a lot of things you can experiment with here. I won't do it in the interest of time, but there are a lot of options you can choose, pick and choose, and see which one works for you. So, but the really important thing here is you want to go to your project here. Uh, if you don't have a project, it would just say project interpreter. But since I have a project, I will just drop down and I will do project interpreter. So what this does is it takes you to here, right? So actually, when you're when you're in your default settings, when you downloaded or when you installed Pycharm for the first time, your project interpreter will look like this. So let's say something like no interpreter. I don't think there will be anything here. And if you installed Python correctly, you can drop down and there will be a Python 3.7. So this is because you actually installed Python, right? Because if you didn't install Python, there'd be nothing here. This is why we have to install Python separately so we can actually load the language as your interpreter so that Pycharm can actually read Python and thus computer can read Python, you know. So this is where it kind of all comes together. So you want to check Python here, and then you want to click apply. Because I already have Python, so I don't have to click apply. Just click cancel, and then it should take you somewhere here. So what you want to do is now go to right click on this area, this light gray area. If there isn't a light gray area, you can, okay, so you can either right click and then, oh wait, never mind. You can, so what you have to do is you have to go to file and then you can click a new project and it will create a project. For example, let's say we want to call it intro, intro to Python 1. Okay, let's just call that there. This window. It will create a virtual environment. So a virtual environment is essentially where your project will be run. So a virtual environment is where the computer can actually read Python. It's sort of like an enclosed space where the computer reads Python, it processes it, it creates, and it actually runs it. So a virtual environment, it's just where your computer is doing all the coding. Okay. So now you have this. Okay, so now you have a gray sidebar with your project here, Intro to Python 1. Okay, so now I'm actually going to open up my own file. I think I think it's here. So actually, this is also something to really keep in mind. If you ever want to open a file, you just come to File, you hover over File, and then you go to Open. And this will take you to your documents, and you want to go to User, or or wherever the path is where you installed it. For example, you can also go to Desktop. So you want to go to User, and I want to come to here. I want to go to Pycharm projects, and I want to, all my stuff is an introduction to. So I'm actually just going to open this window, and now I have introduction to. So here I can create a new Python file. So what I do is I drop down introduction to, and here you have your virtual environment. So you want to create all of your Python files in your virtual environment because that's where your computer will actually run it. Here, actually, you have external libraries. Don't worry about this. When you actually download stuff like NumPy or Pandas or other libraries, this is where it will show up. For example, we have Python and all of its standard libraries already installed because this is what happens when you actually install Python and Pycharm. So you can come in here and you can do new. Ignore all these four. Just go to Python file because if you just choose a regular file, it actually won't be able to compile. So let's just do hello world. And hello world, it will immediately do the py for you. So as you can see here, I actually have a bunch of projects already. So you can actually come in here. Actually, we will just yep. So now we come in here, and now we will write our first line of code. So I'm actually going to teach you guys how to do this. So I want to print out simply the message hello world. So how I do that is I simply type in print, right? and see how now it's a different color. So I'm actually going to talk about why that's the case. And when you print, you can print hello world as a message. You want to surround that in quotation marks. So you want to just type in quotation marks. And the really cool thing about the IDEs is that it actually does the quotation marks for you. So when you type in 1, it just does 2 for you. Now you can actually type inside. So I want to type in hello world. And if you've done programming with Java or C++ before, you might there might be the hello world might be surrounded in curly brackets. It might have a semicolon at the end, but in Python it's that easy. This is why, like I was saying, Python, it's really sort of the quickest language to get used to, the quickest language to develop, because it's just so intuitive, you know. And there you actually have to surround stuff in curly brackets. You have to do all this really convoluted, sort of a little bit more difficult to understand stuff. Whereas in Python, if you want to print hello world, you simply just type print hello world. It's slightly more complicated than, and then after we run it, I'm going to explain sort of this line of coding, sort of what it does. So how you run it is you go to this tab, you right click on the tab, and you can run hello world. So you can hover over here and you can run hello world. So when you run it, it will open up this output. We call this a console, and it will just simply print out hello world. With the exclamation mark, so because that's what you want it to print out. So this is actually really intuitive. Also, it will print out process finish with exit code 0. Whenever your process finishes with exit code 0, that's a good sign. That means all of the lines in your program work.